Rupert Murdoch, forever savvy about the next key outlet that will attract eyeballs, purchased MySpace, spending nearly $600 million so he could, in the language of Wall Street, monetize those eyeballs. Google became a partner in Time Warner, investing $1 billion in its AOL online service. And now Google has bought YouTube, so it would have a better vehicle for delivering interactive ads for Madison Avenue. Viacom, Microsoft, large ad agencies, and others have been buying up key media properties, many of them the leading online sites, with the result that will be a thoroughly commercialized environment, a media plantation for the 21st century, dominated by the same corporate and ideological forces that have produced the system we have lived under the last 50 years.
That's Bill Moyers, and this is Alternative Radio. I'm David Barsamian. This edition of AR features Bill Moyers on media reform. A vibrant media is the oxygen of a living democracy. When the media are dominated by a handful of big corporations, citizens of a democracy are on a respirator gasping for air. James Madison, founding father, understood this well when he said, "A popular government without popular information or the means of acquiring it is but the prologue to a farce or a tragedy or perhaps both. Knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power that knowledge gives." Today, media reform, once thought to be impossible, is an important issue. A growing grassroots movement is demanding change. Bill Moyers is one of America's best-known and respected journalists. He was senior correspondent for CBS News and producer and host of many of public television's most heralded documentaries and interview series. He's the winner of more than 30 Emmy Awards and the author of several bestsellers, including Moyers on America. A longtime fixture on PBS, his new program is Bill Moyers' Journal. He spoke at the National Conference for Media Reform in Memphis, Tennessee on January 12, 2007.
Thank you. Please. Thank you. Thank you for that most generous welcome. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for dinner." Liberty, he said, is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. My fellow lambs, it's good to be in Memphis and find you well armed with passion for democracy, readiness for action, and courage for the next round in the fight for a free and independent press in America. I salute the conviction that brought you here. I cherish the spirit that fills this hall and the camaraderie that we share here. All too often, the greatest obstacle to reform is the reform movement itself. Factions rise, fences are erected, jealousies mount, and the cause all of us believe in is lost in the shattered fragments of what once was a clear and compelling vision. But by avoiding contentious factionism, you have created a strong movement. And I will confess to you that I was skeptical when Bob McChesney and John Nichols first raised with me the issue of media consolidation a few years ago. I was sympathetic but skeptical. The challenge of actually doing something about this issue beyond simply bemoaning its impact on democracy was daunting. How could we hope to come up with an effective response to an inexorable force? It seemed inexorable because all over the previous decades, a series of mega media mergers had swept the country, each deal bigger than the last. The lobby representing the broadcast, cable, and newspaper industry was extremely powerful, with an iron grip on lawmakers and regulators alike. Both parties bowed to their will when the Republican Congress passed and President Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act of 1996. That monstrous assault on democracy with malignant consequences for journalism was nothing but a welfare giveaway to the largest, richest, and most powerful media conglomerations in the world. Goliaths, whose handful of owners controlled, commodified, and monetized everyone and everything in sight. Call it the plantation mentality. That's what struck me as I flew into Memphis for this evening, for this gathering. Even in 1968, the civil rights movement was still battling the plantation mentality based on race, gender, and power that permeated Southern culture long before and even after the groundbreaking legislation of the 1960s. When Martin Luther King came to Memphis to join the strike of garbage workers in 1968, the cry from every striker's heart, "I am a man," voiced the long-suppressed outrage of people whose rights were still being trampled by an ownership class that had arranged the world for its own benefit. The plantation mentality is a phenomenon deeply insinuated in the American experience early on, and it has permeated and corrupted our course as a nation. The journalist of the American Revolution, Thomas Paine, envisioned the new republic as a community of occupations prospering by the aid with which each receives from the other and from the whole. But that vision was repeatedly betrayed, so that less than a century after Thomas Paine's death, Theodore Roosevelt, bolting a Republican Party whose bosses had stolen the nomination from him, declared, "It is not to be wondered at that our opponents have been very bitter, for the lineup in this crisis is one that cuts deep to the foundations of democracy. Our democracy," he said, "is now put to a vital test, for the conflict is between human rights on the one side and on the other special privilege asserted as property rights. The parting of the ways has come." Today, 100 years after Teddy Roosevelt's death, those words ring just as true. America is socially divided and politically benighted. Inequality and poverty grow steadily along with risk and debt. Too many working families cannot make ends meet with two people working, let alone if one stays home to care for children or aging parents. Young people without privilege and wealth struggle to get a footing. Seniors enjoy less security for a lifetime's work. We are racially segregated today in every meaningful sense except for the letter of the law, and the survivors of segregation and immigration toil for pennies on the dollar compared to those they serve. None of this is accidental. Nobel laureate economist Robert Solow, not known for extreme political statements, characterizes what is happening as nothing less than elite plunder, the redistribution of wealth in favor of the wealthy and of power in favor of the powerful. In fact, nearly all the wealth America created over the past 25 years has been captured by the top 20% of households, and most of the gains went to the wealthiest. The top 1% of households captured more than 50% of all the gains in financial wealth, and these households now hold more than twice the share their predecessors held on the eve of the American Revolution. The anti-federalist warning that government naturally works to fortify the conspiracies of the rich proved prophetic. It's the truth today. And America confronts a choice between two fundamentally different economic visions. As Norman Garfinkel writes in his marvelous new book, The American Dream versus the Gospel of Wealth, the historic vision of the American dream is that continuing economic growth and political stability can be achieved by supporting income growth and economic security of middle-class families without restricting the ability of successful businessmen to gain wealth. The counter-belief is that providing maximum financial rewards to the most successful is the way to maintain high economic growth. The choice cannot be avoided. What kind of economy do we seek, and what kind of nation do we wish to be? Do we want to be a country in which the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, or do we want a country committed to an economy that provides for the common good, offers upward mobility, supports a middle-class standard of living, and provides generous opportunities for all? In Garfinkel's book,